Welcome to the Coaching Cast, your working from home managers club. Here to check in with you weekly to share your working highs and lows, remind you that you're not alone and that there's many of us outside of your current four walls, all trying to be the best manager, leader, coach and human being that we can be. I'm Lisa, founder of Grip Corporate Coaching, personal performance coach, leader and chief eye roller when it comes to all nonsensical corporate mumbo jumbo, which suffocates rather than advocates.
And I'm Suzy, sales and business coach at Future You Business Coaching, currently taking on my hardest coaching assignment to date, parenting a toddler who doesn't take too kindly to any form of questioning.
In this podcast, we aim to explore the leadership and coaching techniques required to navigate and survive the current business environment, presenting different topics each episode, which we will discuss with some special guests along the way, sharing our ideas, our hints, and our tips for you to take away and try for yourself. We hope you enjoy listening. In today's episode, we're discussing why it's okay to say, I don't know, as a leader or manager, and how by showing vulnerability, you will develop stronger relationships with your teams who will subsequently grow and be more successful as a result. Stay with us and enjoy. So, Suze, we're in season 2. Can you believe it? It's absolutely nuts. I can't believe actually how quickly our little break has gone. It's absolutely flown by, but it's wonderful to be back. So how are things?
Yeah, welcome back. Crazy. I know, we're back already. But yeah, no, things are good, thank you. You might notice I'm in a new place recording. I'm having some building work done at my house. So I'm going to be recording the podcast for the next couple of weeks in this lovely office. So this is a lovely lady called Laura's lent me her office. And it's very nice to be in here today. A bit different. So I've been out of the house. I've been let out of the house finally. As with everybody, we've been out and about. So yeah, transitioning back into the real world. Found it a little bit strange. I think I'd kind of forgotten how to socialize and how to actually interact with people face to face the first couple of times and met some friends outside. But I feel like I'm getting into the swing of things now. So hopefully this podcast will be okay and I'll be able to remember how to talk and how to speak. I mean, I don't know. I can't promise anything today. But yeah, back into the swing of things. That's for sure. But how have you been?
Yeah, good. So you're also having some building work done as well. So that's something we've mutually shared during this past lockdown. And
it is.
I was laughing because obviously we have our bullshit bingo, which we're both really fond of, but I've now started to cultivate business lingo. Not business lingo, building lingo. That's what I mean. Building lingo. Can't even get my own term right. Building lingo.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Coaching Cast.
God, starting off rusty. I apologise, everyone. Yeah, building lingo. So I don't know whether it's potentially a new feature. We've got bullshit bingo and building lingo, but the one that I want to share today is pointing. And pointing has confused me no end because I have no understanding of what actually it is, and it's definitely not what you would expect it to be. So. And actually, this is another question potentially for our listeners out there who are much more au fait with building work and renovations, which is, why is pointing called pointing? Because how on earth does pointing relate to grouting in your brickwork?
Well, I certainly can't help you with this question.
I just don't get that. So when all the builders, and my husband included, kept going on about point work and we need to repoint, I was just like, what's everyone talking about? And I just nodded along. I was like, yeah. But I mean, when someone literally pointed out to me, unless maybe that's what it's to do with, someone goes, oh, look, and points towards your grouting and goes, look, the grouting's coming out of your walls. That's not a good sign because obviously it means your damp proofing has failed. Maybe because everyone points at it, they can refer to it as pointing. I don't know. But that is my current
pointing.
Yeah, that's my current conundrum. So yes, maybe as we evolve this podcast and maybe actually as we run out of material, we can have building lingo in there as well as bullshit bingo.
On the subject of bullshit bingo, we've had some great bullshit bingos in for this season. I cannot wait to share them with you all. But I have to say also, well, in our little break, I've been probably like everybody watching Line of Duty. Have you been watching it, Lisa?
I haven't. I know it's a travesty because my mum is obsessed with it, and we both love the same genre of drama, and I love murder mystery dramas, especially by the Beeb. And so how I have not got into Line of Duty, I don't know. So I do need to get into it.
Well, you absolutely do. It's a brilliant watch, but also the amount of acronyms they use, particularly in this latest series, is probably bullshit bingo in itself. Like we could do a whole feature just on Line of Duty bullshit bingo. It's literally next level.
Let's do it. Right, on that note, there's a few builds there. We've got building lingo, Line of Duty bullshit bingo, and our own. Let's get chatting about today's topic.
Let's do it.
So in today's episode, we're discussing why it's okay to say, I don't know, as a leader or a manager, and how by showing vulnerability, you're demonstrating authenticity and ultimately developing and growing stronger relationships with your teams. So 2020 and 2021 have supplied an abundance of I don't know moments as we continue to lead in a time of uncertainty where next month has been a challenge to predict, let alone the next, year, 2 years, even 5 years. So much of what we've known and understood and been able to presume has been thrown up in the air because of the pandemic and our predictable way of life being shattered. Even the simplest, most normal of things have not been allowed. Leadership has actually never been about having all the answers. And yet, why do so many of us put ourselves under pressure to be an endless encyclopedia for our teams? Famous author and optimist, author of Start With Why, Simon Sinek, who I'm sure you're all well aware of, he states, life changes for the better when we realise that we don't have to know everything and we don't have to pretend that we do. Suze, what's your experience and thoughts on this notion of vulnerability in leadership?
Yeah, so I have definitely experienced this in my career today. I think it's probably useful to kind of break the 2 points apart and kind of discuss each one in a little bit more detail. So firstly, I think exploring vulnerability in leadership and what that actually means and kind of bringing that to life for everybody. Because I think certainly everybody's experience of doing it, of what it is, how comfortable they are demonstrating it is probably different. I think for me, vulnerability in leadership is about our ability to express ourselves, obviously, in our behaviour, in the words that we use, in the experiences we share, the emotions we feel with others, to kind of really land how we genuinely feel and think towards a particular subject or topic. And I think it's being able to do that in a position of leadership, and also actually probably generally in life, because you need to show an element of vulnerability in your day-to-day life as well. It's a reality of being human, really. But it can be quite difficult for a lot of people to feel comfortable doing that. And it's a strength, I think, which requires quite a lot of courage, especially in a business environment, to be that open and be that genuine with who you are and how you feel and what you think of a particular subject. I know for me, I've had a mixed experience of both showing it myself in positions of leadership, but also I think kind of being comfortable in doing so. I think as when I was early on in my career, maybe as a graduate and the first couple of jobs out of uni, if somebody asked me what I thought of something, I felt less comfortable sharing my genuine view because I felt I would be judged. I felt that perhaps that wasn't the right view to be articulating. But as I've grown in my career, I've probably become more comfortable with just being like, this is what I think, this is why I think it, and I'm quite happy to kind of tell you what that is and why. And I think it's important to think about why demonstrating vulnerability, especially in leadership, is so important, because I think if we think about sharing times of, weakness or sharing struggles that we've all experienced as we go through life with other people, so it doesn't have to necessarily be in a work context, it can be in a personal life as well. By doing so, we automatically deepen relationships with other people. And that can earn you trust. And I think also it can demonstrate you're not necessarily like hiding from imperfection. You're being real and being human. We're not all perfect. We're all still work in progresses. I certainly am, especially at the moment with this podcast. We're all human at the end of the day. And I think it's about how we open ourselves up to being comfortable with showing an element of vulnerability. So for me, I think that's what vulnerability in leadership is, just to kind of bring that to life. And my experience of it is it's definitely something I've wrangled with in my career to date. Probably, like I said, become a little bit more comfortable with it as I've got older and I've become more confident in my experience and in my roles. But it's a really interesting topic, hence why we're talking about it today. What are your experiences of vulnerability in leadership, Lisa?
Before I talk about that, I just wanted to touch on the comment you made about courage, because it's so key, I think, to the point around being vulnerable. It takes a lot of bravery and courage to be able to do it. And actually, there was this fantastic quote that I picked out of someone who I'm connected with on LinkedIn yesterday that just encapsulated this. And it's a quote from Brené Brown, who I'm a huge fan of, the incredible doctor of psychology in America. And her quote is, "Vulnerability is not weakness, it's our most accurate measure of courage," which, I think really resonates with what you were saying. I think in terms of my personal experience with vulnerability, in my personal life, I've actually grown very comfortable with being vulnerable as a tool to protect myself, which actually sounds like a conflicting statement, because by being vulnerable, you're exposing yourself. And therefore, the sense it gives is the opposite of protecting and defending yourself. But as a child, when I was struggling with my self-confidence, actually sharing my true self with people and making a bit of a joke out of myself, so in other words, bringing attention to my flaws, was a way to have power over anyone else being able to do that for me. So in terms of bullying, I was able to kind of control bullying. Not that I was ever bullied, but if anything, it was a way to prevent myself from being bullied. Because if I was giving out the flaws and the areas of myself that I didn't like, if I was just giving that away and drawing attention to it, no one else could. So I think it's an area I've actually, over time, become comfortable with without really realizing it, in terms of what I was doing and why I was doing it. I think when I became a manager, I can totally relate to what you were sharing in respect of, in the early stages of my career, not wanting to admit to not knowing things, because I didn't want to bring attention to any areas of my skill set that were lacking. And I think when I started out as a manager, I very much felt the pressure and the need to have all the answers, because that was my understanding of what being a manager was, that you were there to give information, direct, tell people what to do. People were looking to you for that. And if you weren't able to do it, you weren't good enough. You weren't supposed to be a manager, and I was in the wrong role. But at the same time, I was receiving feedback from my senior managers that my approach was not helpful to other people, that I was dragging people along and I wasn't investing in growing them. The problem was that no one actually explained to me what the opposite of that would be, which is ultimately turning to my team and asking them more questions and getting them more involved and enabling them to input.
Yeah.
And I think if someone had just helped me out a bit earlier, that would have been really helpful with my development. Yeah. But hey, you learn these things when you learn these things. But I think it's such a powerful tool for a leader to simply say, I don't know, what do you think? And actually bringing their team into the conversation, because as soon as you acknowledge those around you by saying that and by inviting them to contribute, what you're saying is I trust and believe and value you, and the fact that you actually may know the answer to this situation, this problem, and have the skills and the level of contribution we need to give to it. And I think that's so important. I know for me, when I've been led by others, that has meant a huge amount to me to be asked my opinion. Because it really enables me to feel important and valued, and it's important for my self-worth and my self-esteem, so I think recognizing that in leadership and knowing that actually the gift you're giving those around you when you're doing that is really important.
I think what you're talking about there is about the power of role modeling, and I certainly experienced that in this subject in my career, where you made a really good point before about how you didn't know necessarily like how to grow those other people or show that that opposite of having all of the answers. And I think that's something I also struggled with. I didn't know how to like do the opposite. I didn't know how to do that. And then I worked for this really great manager who started, I think, role modeling what the opposite was. And that was about bringing us in, saying, I don't know, but actually, what do you think? And I learned, I suppose, how to demonstrate that vulnerability through her actions in real life. And for me, that works really well because I learn a lot through doing and seeing. As we know, I'm not a particularly great reader. I don't learn a huge amount from reading books. So actually seeing it in action and being able to pick up on those words and actions that somebody else was doing to demonstrate that point was really, really good and helpful for me. And a light bulb went off, and I was in a leadership position as well at the time. And I was like, that's it. That's exactly what I kind of feel like I've been wrangling with and didn't know how to do. And that's so important to demonstrate what it is that we need to, potentially work towards as well.
Definitely.
I do like what you were saying, about this kind of myth that is an operation in the world of business, which is around, when you don't know the answer or you don't know what the solution might be, feeling like you should. And it definitely is a myth. Like if you think that you should have all the answers, you should have all, what to expect, know how to solve everything, you don't. Like stop that now. You absolutely don't. You need to kind of drop that superhero act without sounding too tough. I think if you are absolutely, it's you cannot be thinking about the answers of everything all the time, hypothesizing constantly. It's so tiring, and I think if you're put in that place where you don't know the answer, you're very tempted in order to kind of make it up, fake it, perhaps, in some instances, bluff it. And you don't need to do that. Like, that's not needed. Like, believe us, it's not needed. Because actually, when you're in a place of being questioned and you make something up or you bluff something that you're not convinced by, your credibility, your authenticity will be gone like that. Because people will see it, they'll absolutely see straight through it. So you need to resist that temptation to just kind of answer and feel that you need to come up with an answer, because you don't. You really, really don't. Have you had any experiences of feeling like you needed to, come up with the answer continuously?
It was a role where I was new to it. I had a new team, and it was in an area of the business that didn't really align to my skill set, let alone my knowledge. And so I was juggling a constant of I don't know, both in terms of the subject matter, the team I was managing, and the new relationships I was having to build. And actually that was up and down. So it was the team I was leading, but also the management team who were leading me. And that whole year was extremely exhausting because I was continually in a state of, I don't know, I need to find the answers. I need to improve my knowledge. I need to grow my skills. I need to come up with proposals. I think I spent the whole year putting together proposals and, trying to find solutions. And it was absolutely exhausting. It was awful. And the simple matter of it was, yes, there were some external pressures being put onto me that put me into that position. But actually, a lot of it was to do with my own perceptions and the pressure I was putting on myself. And I am one of my own worst critics. I think we all can be to ourselves. And I know the moment that I realized that I didn't have to be good at everything, that I was allowed to be good at the things that I liked and I enjoyed. And it was okay that the other areas that I didn't like or enjoy, I didn't have to be good at. So, for example, I'm not particularly analytical. I don't really enjoy data. Although I've worked in roles that focus on process and process development, so operational processes, and I did enjoy it for a time, I don't enjoy it anymore. But the role that I was doing was in all of those areas. And what was not being requested of me, was not being celebrated, was anything to do around people development, which are the areas that I really enjoy the most. So it was only through understanding I don't have to be good at analytics. I just have to understand the basics of data. I just need to understand what the data is telling me. I don't need to know the ins and outs of it. I don't have to create it. I don't have to put together a whole analytical report around it. It was only until I realized that it was okay to not be good at things and to be accepting of that, which has taken time. And I still have a moment around that I was able to relieve the pressure on myself and start being able to celebrate the things I was good at and be comfortable with what I wasn't. But that has taken time. And I think, I'm always keen, as much as we want to simplify subjects to share with people to make sense of them, what I know we don't want to do is downplay or oversimplify what it takes to get there.
Yeah.
Because a lot of what I know I'm sharing has taken years of cultivating. And I think I still cultivate it now. I'm still working on it because you say we are work in progress. Humans are flawed, and that's why we're wonderful. We're not supposed to be perfect. But I think it's being aware of this, being conscious of it, understanding how you yourself react and how you yourself are feeling in your current situation, and recognizing where possibly you could show more vulnerability to really support yourself and grow your relationships, both in work and out. I think that's what we're trying to talk about here. And actually it's interesting because I posted about vulnerability on LinkedIn yesterday in preparation for this episode, and a really close, my best friend in America commented on my post and shared her experiences and highlighted a really important point that was a really good reminder for me, which is being vulnerable is a really important, powerful topic and is very much one that we can all develop, but some of us will find it easier to do than others. And it's because we are all completely different and we come from different places. And actually, really critically, to be vulnerable means to feel safe. So you already, in some ways, have to feel safe in yourself, but safe in your environment. And it's important to check your privilege, which I really appreciated as a comment, because it is definitely something I need to do more regularly. So it's very easy for me to say that I'm comfortable being vulnerable. I actually see it as something that really helps me to grow my confidence. I'm confident because I am vulnerable, but I come from a place of safety because my basic needs are met and I feel secure. So I just want to thank my best friend, Adele, I'll name her, for sharing it, because it was a really good reminder and a good reality check for me.
That's a great build, Adele. Thank you. And I think as well, you know, from my personal experience, I now work for myself. But, you know, I haven't. I've worked in big organisations where you've kind of got a big machine around you, a big safety net of an organisation around you, people around you, different departments around you with different knowledge and skills and expertise. And I think my journey around being okay with demonstrating vulnerability has changed now I work for myself. I think previously, because I was more in that corporate environment where, wrongly, I would say, you can be judged for demonstrating vulnerability. Not in all instances, but you can be, because again, this myth, which we've touched upon, still exists, that you need to have all the answers. And if you don't, you're kind of, your knowledge is kind of judged. And that's not what we're kind of wanting. And I don't think that's where growth comes from. But I have to say, like, now I work for myself, my experience of vulnerability is different. Again, because it's totally solely down to me now on everything. So I'm the accountant, I'm the marketing person, I'm the social media person, I am the product in terms of what I'm selling as well. And I think my comfortableness, I was going to say that's not a word, but my comfort levels of demonstrating vulnerability, now I work for myself, have definitely changed and probably become more so. I think I'm okay with saying, like, I don't know how to do this, or this is making me feel uneasy, or this is making me feel uncomfortable, but actually I know I need to go away and find the answers to help me move forward and be more comfortable. But again, I think that touches upon Adele's point, which is around that place of safety. I'm still in that place of feeling okay and comfortable and safe within the environment that I'm living and operating in. But I do think my experience of demonstrating vulnerability has shifted. Now I'm out of probably the corporate world and organisation.
And in what direction, Suzy? Is it less vulnerable, more vulnerable?
I'm probably more open to demonstrating vulnerability, and being okay with, like, I might not know all the answers or how to do something or straight off, or I might have to work harder to go and find what the plan is or what the solution is, because it's just all solely down to me now. Whereas before, when I was in that corporate environment, I had lots of people around me, lots of experts, lots of knowledge, lots of skill sets, which was quite easy to go and tap into that and gain those answers probably in a different way. And I think that judgment's gone, because I'm the only one judging, because it's my business, it's my experience now as a solopreneur.
That's it,
little
solopreneur
one there. So yeah, I think that's probably like my most recent experience of it. But going back into the business world, because I know a lot of our listeners are probably operating in that environment of being in a more corporate or kind of organizational context, what have been some of the kind of benefits that you've seen in your leadership experience of demonstrating that vulnerability to others? Are there any kind of specific stories or examples where it's had a really positive effect in terms of the outcome?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's the demonstrating my own vulnerability to those I managed was where I saw the greatest positive outcome. So I know one individual that I have in my head specifically. On the surface, I think she came across very much as a closed book. So she'd come into my team. I was managing her. She was a team manager. She was one of a few team managers that I had. And we were an established team of team managers as well. So she was very much joining it as a new person because of a restructure. And on the surface, I think she came across as being very closed. We were very different characters. I'm an extrovert and I'm quite direct, I'm quite fast paced. This individual was very much more reserved and a lot more considered, cautious and slower paced. And I think because of those sort of very much different preference styles, I was always keen to ensure that I was respecting her preference, but while at the same time honouring my own and wanting to establish a strong relationship between the two of us. And I think by always being honest to her, always showing my true self to her, by always saying and acknowledging her strengths and her skill set and acknowledging that I didn't have that, to bring her into the conversation and to ask her point of view, over time, she very much opened up to me a lot more. Actually, at times, surprised me with her honesty and actually the vulnerability she showed in return. I specifically remember a time when she openly said to me she found me intimidating, and that it was an intimidation from the perspective of she was intimidated by my experience and my knowledge, and at times the skill set that I had. And as much as it identified to her the areas she wanted to work on, she felt very uncomfortable around it because it felt so different to her. I mean, that's a massive demonstration of vulnerability, I think, to admit that. And especially from an individual who I know, really her preference was to be the opposite, to not share and to keep it close. So that's sort of probably the strongest example I have. And as I said, it was very much that result took time. I managed her for, I think it was over 12 months. And those types of conversations were only really happening around, halfway through that, month 8, to be honest. So it was very much a work in progress. But throughout, I was always very much showing my true self and admitting my areas, my gaps, if you like, my areas of development to her, because I was inviting her to do the same to me. I wanted to know what hers were, and I wanted her to feel able to share them with me so we could work on it together. What about you, Suze? Have you got an example?
I think it does take time to build. Yeah, so I think it does take time to build that level of comfort and trust to feel safe to demonstrate vulnerability. And that certainly is the case for me. I am a person who, once I trust, I'm comfortable to then open up and demonstrate and be very open about what my vulnerabilities are, or what my weaknesses are, what my development areas are. But I can't do that straight away. So if I just meet somebody for the first time, it takes me a while to warm up before I feel comfortable and, I suppose, safe enough to be able to then give that information and that knowledge, because that information can be powerful to that other person, and you would like to think and hope that they would treat that information they're receiving with empathy and with understanding and consideration, and then give back in terms of perhaps how they are feeling, or where their vulnerabilities lie. But I've also had experiences in my career where that hasn't been the case, where I've perhaps given a very open kind of description of some of my perhaps development areas to colleagues, and then that hasn't kind of been reciprocated and given back, and then I felt quite exposed by doing that, because I made the wrong judgment call, that I thought that was a place of safety and trust. And I think if you are managing people and somebody feels comfortable enough to demonstrate their vulnerabilities to you, please make sure that you receive that and respond to that in a way in which you are privileged to be able to have had that information, that person has felt safe enough to confide in you. Because if you don't, the downside will be that you're start cracking your relationship between the two of you, because you haven't necessarily demonstrated back that you appreciate what they've done and perhaps how they have taken themselves out of their comfort zone. And so in my example, when I did that and I didn't get it back, or a response back that was kind of acknowledged perhaps how I'd opened myself and how I'd really like flexed in terms of what I would normally do, I immediately shut down and I was like, no more. I've learnt my lesson now. And so I think for leaders, that's a really important part of our conversation as well, is about how you respond to when somebody has opened up and given you an insight into what their vulnerabilities are, and perhaps you respond back with yours as well, so that you're also like equals in that relationship, because otherwise you then start to get like a change in the power of the balance of power. It's not about power, but you're not then kind of seen or experiencing as equals, and that's really important in order to building that trust and building that safe environment between you all.
Absolutely.
And what would be some of your top tips in perhaps building a culture of vulnerability?
So I think my top tips in respect of starting to build vulnerability, and I think it's an ongoing activity. This isn't a do this and then you've done it. It's ongoing, especially as you point out, Suzy, your situation and environments always evolve and change, and therefore so do you. So it's a work in progress always. I think my top 3 things are: try asking your team, what do you think? I think we've talked about that a few times in all of this, but I think it's a great starting point to show some vulnerability. Even precede that with, I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah.
I think my second thing is, if you make a mistake, because we all do, and us as leaders make them, and managers just as prolifically as everyone else, we're not immune to making mistakes. If you make a mistake, admit it. Show other people in your team it's okay to make mistakes, and then build on that by sharing what you've learned from doing so. I think this builds on your point about role modeling, Suze, because I think if you're showing people it's okay to make a mistake, and look what I've learned from it, look how I've changed and evolved because of it, you're encouraging others to do the same.
Yeah.
And it's starting to grow that space of honesty that then builds trust, which is so important. And then I think the third thing is start practicing sharing with other people how you feel about things. I say start practicing in respect of, if it's not something you already do, if it's not something you feel comfortable to do, just start looking at how you can do a little bit of it every week. So share how you're feeling with other people and acknowledge it. And again, support other people. You're inviting them to do the same. I don't mean like dwelling on things or going into a deep emotional outburst, but simply saying, I don't feel that great today, or I'm feeling a little bit sad, or even opposite, I'm feeling great today, but just showing a little bit of the inside before you move on with the day, I think just shows to people I'm human. And if I'm sharing with you how I feel, it's because I'm also keen to know how you feel too.
It's now time for this week's listener question. This is where you, the listener, send us your workplace dilemmas or questions, and we try and answer them and offer some suggestions. So this week's question was sent in to us by Ellie in Surrey, and I will share Ellie's question now.
Hi Suzy and Lisa, it's Ellie here from Surrey. I'm loving the podcast and already using some of the hints and tips you've been providing with my team. It's really, really informative. My question for this week is, have you got any hints and tips to support someone who is suffering from imposter syndrome, and how I can do that as a manager and also from a personal level? That would be great. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Ellie, for your question on a subject which we haven't actually talked much about yet on the Coaching Cast, but I know is a subject which is very popular, but also one that Lisa, you in particular feel very passionately about. So what are your thoughts for Ellie on this subject?
Yeah, so I think the first thing I would say is it's such an incredible first step that this individual's taken to share with Ellie how they're feeling. And that's a credit to Ellie as well, because they clearly have a trusting relationship. Because from my experience suffering with imposter syndrome, actually the biggest challenge I had to overcome was the fact that I hadn't told anybody. And obviously at the time I didn't know how to describe it, in terms of I didn't realise it had a label, a term, but I didn't want to admit this to anybody. So I didn't have anyone that I felt I could trust to share that with. So, it's interesting. We're talking about this in respect of the topic of vulnerability. I didn't feel safe enough to be vulnerable at the time to be able to share this with anyone. So I think it's an incredible first step. This individual has shared this, because I think that feeling of imposter syndrome, you feel like you really need to watch your back, if that makes sense. You feel like that you can't trust anybody and that people are out to get you. And actually, ultimately, it's just you. You're already getting yourself, like you're already attacking yourself. It actually comes from inside. But knowing that someone else understands how you're feeling because you've shared it actually starts to help you to address the imposter syndrome, because actually someone else is watching your back now, which is really nice. I think my advice to Ellie is really start exploring with the individual what they're thinking in detail. So have them describe it. What are the thoughts they're having? How do they feel? What are the words that they are actually telling themselves? Like, can they listen to their own dialogue? Does it come into sentences, so that you can really, start producing some information to look at with them? I think it's then looking at, when these thoughts happen, are there any themes in terms of triggers that are causing it? So is it a situation, a scenario, a person even? I know mine was a combination of things, to be honest. But it could be that certain actions or tasks or environments trigger it, or, as I said, or even people. So then you can start getting really specific, because I think when you're clear around the feelings and what they actually are, and when this is happening, you're much clearer then to be able to look at how to address it. I think the big thing as well is, when you're going through that exercise, you can start determining what is fact and what is fiction, because so much of this is being generated by the individual themselves. You start literally attacking yourself from the inside out, and actually being able to determine what is you and what you're telling yourself and what is the actual facts of a situation is really important, because again, it just gives you so much more to be able to create the right solution. Because otherwise you could be creating solutions that are just not appropriate, they're not relevant. And then I think it's really encouraging the individual to, once they're clear about the feelings and when is this happening and what is fact and what is fiction, to really then build their fact base in terms of how they themselves see themselves. So being clear around, what are your strengths, what are your capabilities, what's your experience, because actually you have every right to be where you are. You've earned it, and you're there because it's a recognition of how great you are actually. So enabling them to gather those helpful, positive, reinforcing facts to add to their fact pot can then really help them to have a point of reference. So then when they get these feelings of imposter syndrome, they get the self-doubt, they can look to their fact pot that they've built and remind themselves of the truths, and just help to manage some of that negative fiction that they've got. So that would be my tips, I think.
That's a very comprehensive answer, Lisa. Thank you for sharing. I think there's some great stuff in there that hopefully Ellie can take away and use and implement. It is a subject that's quite tough, and I think in a number of regards, for the individual, obviously, who's experiencing and feeling like that, but also I think as a manager, to manage somebody and try and help somebody move forward who's feeling like that. That's also quite a tough place to be as well. So my only build would be for Ellie herself is that actually if you feel that you need some help with and support with building and planning those conversations and those interventions to help that other person, I think that's also totally natural. So make sure you reach out as well to get a level of support if you need it, because it can be a little bit of a tricky one to manage successfully, because you want to do the right job for the other person. So if those of you who are listening have your own thoughts on this question and would like to share, or have a question for us to answer during this season, please do get in touch. And you can do that by emailing us at hello@thecoachingcast.co.uk, or send us a message on Instagram at thecoachingcast.
It's that time that everyone's been waiting for. It's bullshit bingo. Yay! I swear it's the only reason anyone listens to us now, actually. So as a reminder, a refresher, bullshit bingo is where we call out phrases which get commonly used in the workplace, which make us cringe. And today is an absolute corker. I'm not going to be able to say this out laughing, I don't think. So today's bullshit bingo is low-hanging fruit in the context of focusing on the easy, most accessible opportunities first. I love this one. So this has actually been sent in to us by one of our listeners, Katie. So thank you so much for this gem. So Suze, come on then. What are your thoughts about this bullshit bingo?
Lols, firstly. Absolute corker of a bullshit bingo, low-hanging fruit. I've heard this being used. I don't think I've ever said this. I'm just trying to check myself as to whether I have. I don't think I have, but I've definitely heard this being used. I used to work in sales, so we used to refer to it quite a lot around the more easily accessible opportunities that wouldn't take as much to kind of get over the line and get away. So that's how we would refer to them, as that low-hanging fruit. It always used to make me think of strawberries. I don't know really why, but I think it's because, you know, if you go like strawberry picking, you go into a field of strawberries and they're very low to the ground, like on the stem. So you go through the plants. If anybody's watching this on YouTube, they'll be like, what the hell is she doing with her arms? Oh,
yeah, no. This is what I was doing, wasn't it?
Her arms. Yeah.
Here I am. Here's the little strawberry.
The low-hanging fruit is here. I'll just pick that off the stem and off we go. Done.
God, I can't help but thinking of just really rude things. When someone says low-hanging fruit, I'm just like, oh, God. I just immediately go into a space of smut, just pure smut, low-hanging fruit, like plums, low-hanging plums. So yeah, sorry, I can only go dirty and disgustingly rude on this one.
Just lowered the tone of this podcast, everybody. Today.
Yet again. So yeah, low-hanging fruit. Yeah, not for me. This one definitely
it's
not. I just wouldn't be able to say it without just being completely inappropriate, to be honest. Oh, dearie me. It's a good one, though. Thank you very much, Katie. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Katie.
So we're coming to the end of today's episode, where we've explored the subject of vulnerability in leadership and the importance of saying, I don't know, to enable you to demonstrate that vulnerability to your team and those you work with. And importantly, to follow that up with, what do you think? So that you can invite people to share and bring them into the conversation to strengthen relationships and to build more effective teams. Our tips from today for you to try to set and manage your own level of vulnerability in your role, and to start practicing this now, because we will stress this is a work in progress. It takes time, and that's absolutely okay. So here's our tips from today. The first one is saying, as I said, I don't know, what do you think? Second one is admit your mistakes and share what you've learnt. So therefore, demonstrating to other people it's okay to make mistakes. It's all about the learns from those mistakes, and create that space of openness, honesty and trust. So important. Number 3 is acknowledge and share how you're feeling. And we don't mean this in terms of an outpouring of emotion. It's about being comfortable to share how you're feeling at a level at which you'll feel comfortable with, to start inviting others to do the same, to give you more insights to grow relationships with your people, and actually also to support them more effectively if you know actually how they're doing. And the 4th one is respond sensitively when an individual has demonstrated vulnerability to you. Say thank you to them for doing that and repeat it. So follow it up with them, check in with them, and continue to encourage them sharing that vulnerability. As well as our top tips, we also have some questions for you to try asking yourself this week to support this subject of vulnerability. Number 1 is, what is stopping me from sharing with my team? So what is stopping you from sharing how you're feeling, your own admissions of mistakes? What is stopping you from being more open? Number 2 is, what difference would sharing more make, whether that's to your team or to your manager? So really think about actually what the benefits would be if you started doing this more. And the 3rd thing is, how will I be more vulnerable? What will I do? And try and challenge yourself to take that action this week. So we hope you've enjoyed today and you've got some new ideas to take away and try for yourselves. If you have any questions, thoughts or feedback, we'd love to hear from you. You can contact us at hello@thecoachingcast.co.uk, or you can go to Instagram where you can find us at thecoachingcast.
Your support means everything to us. Therefore, if you have liked what you've heard, then please give us a follow on Instagram, as Lisa said, at The Coaching Cast. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And most importantly, subscribe to future episodes wherever you listen to your podcasts, and also on YouTube by searching The Coaching Cast. Our episode next week is all about exploring having a growth mindset and how you can look to do this within your work and also in your personal life. Also, don't forget, there are 10 other episodes of the Coaching Cast from season 1, which you can listen to at any time and wherever you listen to your podcasts.
So we both love music, which we talk about often. And those of you that listen to season 1 will have got familiar with the way in which we conclude our episodes, where we select a track and recommend it to you to listen to today to brighten your day. You can find our Spotify playlist for season 1 on Spotify. Literally search for The Coaching Cast, you'll find it. It's an eclectic mix of tracks.
It really is.
So to build on that, we will have a season 2 Spotify playlist for The Coaching Cast. And it's my turn to pick the track today. And I have picked Treat People with Kindness by Harry Styles, which I really like. It's such a sweet song. And I was saying to Suzy, the music video featuring Phoebe Waller-Bridge dancing with Harry Styles is amazing. So definitely
I need to go and check that out.
Definitely do. But that's my track for today. So I hope you find that uplifting. And remember, have a great week and you've got this.